Well, hello, everybody. Merry early Christmas to all of you from wherever you are across the country, across New York City. We're glad that you're here because we just want to spread some Christmas cheer. Wow, I rhymed. That was good. But anyways, yes, we're so glad that you're here. As always, every Building Blocks is special. And this is our very last one for 2020. I am so ready to be done with 2020. And we're 6 days from Christmas. We're so close to New Year's. So thank you for taking time to spend time with us instead of being with your families on a Saturday. Yeah, my name is Fiel Sakir. For those of you that do not know me, I'm Director of Partnerships here at City Mission. So welcome to Building Blocks, which is our teaching arm of City Mission. And so many of us who live in immigrant neighborhoods like Elmhurst, where we're based, we're just unaware of the possibilities of how we can bring change to our community. And there are just so many people that are not empowered. We feel that there's nothing to be done, or that if there is something, there's too much red tape, there's too much of a mountain to climb. And so we here at City Mission provide the tools, the experiences, and the community to help make your dreams come true. Wow, sounds like Disney. Anyways, so if you are not a follower of Jesus, no problem. We welcome you here. This is a talk on fostering. It is not just a religious thing. We want you to be here with us and to see how we see the world and how people of all colors and all stripes, are here. They're present. And so we have people from all different walks of life. And so today we're talking about fostering and adoption, because in this Christmas season, we celebrate that fateful day where Jesus, Yeshua, from Nazareth came as a baby and adopted us into his family so that we can one day foster others. And so that's why we have Sarah here. But before we get to Sarah, I just wanted to share some good news, like Flora Ministries, Noemi, shout out to Noemi, this amazing powerhouse of a woman activist. She has, over the pandemic, installed 2 sinks in Elmhurst for the homeless community that is there. And just done a lot of amazing things like giving food and things like that. Unfortunately, they've been removed. So that's the sad news that goes with that. But there are people loving those that are vulnerable. Just this week, a group of people have helped set up a tent for our friends out there that are on the street. And it was just in time because it snowed later that night, from which we were just digging all our cars out and all of that. And then we have wonderful people in our community like Chandra Awoworuntu, who was here for January's Building Blocks on human trafficking, specifically in Elmhurst. And she's one of the amazing cooks. So what is so cool about you being here and just everything that's happening is everyone is interconnected and in this together. It is not a separate thing. We're together for Elmhurst and a community. So woot woot. Yeah, and so thank you again to Lester, who suggested this topic of fostering in light of the Christmas season, in light of the holidays, and to just think about people that we cannot see. So on to Sarah. Sarah is a native New Yorker and licensed social worker working in foster care and adoption services. She's a graduate of NYU, where she earned her master's. She's smart. As well as SUNY Geneseo, where she earned her bachelor's. And she's an introvert at heart, but finds meaningful conversations so meaningful. In her downtime, she loves to make candles and watch stand-up comedy, which I'm sure I am going to ask her about later. Because I love comedy as well. In fact, I try to make sure I laugh every night before I go to bed. So fun fact, she loves to dance at weddings. So if you have a wedding coming up soon, invite her. If she could eat one food for the rest of her life, it would be pizza. The question is which flavor, which type. And she listens to Christmas music, get this, all year round. She is one of those rebels. And that is why she's talking to us about fostering. So take it away, Sarah. Thank you for being here.
Cool. Thanks, Fiel, for that lively introduction. And thank you to the City Mission team for having me this morning. Thanks, everyone, for joining. My name is Sarah. I am a licensed master social worker, and I currently work in foster care. So I am not a foster parent. I just want to preface my talk by saying that I have been working at a foster care agency for the past 2 years, providing case planning services to children and families. But prior to this, I actually used to work at a different foster care agency. And I used to provide therapy to teenage girls who are living in a group home. So that's a little bit about my professional experience in child welfare. So the title of my talk today is Redefining Families, What It Means to Foster a Child. So my intention for our time this morning is just to shed a little bit of light on the foster care system. So why don't we get started? I want to begin by telling a little bit of a story that happened about a year ago, pre-COVID. So the church I go to, we have a Friday night Bible study. And there, we would usually go out to eat afterwards. After we had Bible study, we just like hang out with each other, have a good time. So on one particular Friday, a group of us went out to get burgers and beers and just like having a good time. So I happened to sit across from a newcomer. He had come to our Bible study and then he joined us afterwards to eat. We're just like making small talk. He told me that he works at a startup and like yada, yada, yada. And then he asked me what I do. And I told him I work in foster care. And then like he just kind of like lights up and he's like telling me all about like his friends who like foster dogs and puppies. And he's like, that is like so cool. He's like, that's really amazing work. He's like, I want to like be a foster parent someday. And I just kind of like looked at him and I like kind of chuckled and I was like, well, I actually work in foster care, like not with dogs, but with children. And the guy was like shook. He was like super thrown off by like my response. And I like his face just like changed so quick. It was kind of a funny encounter. And I know that's not what he was expecting at all. But my takeaway from this encounter is that like there's just a lot of folks out there who just don't know about foster care. I personally didn't know anything about foster care until I was like getting my master's. And it was like one of the populations that we work with as social workers. So I think I would like for our time here this morning to kind of change that and to kind of get everyone's feet wet about foster care. So what is it? Foster care is a temporary arrangement where children are removed from the care of their parents. So this can happen for a variety of reasons. Most commonly, it's because children are abused or neglected, but there are also children who are voluntarily placed into foster care. So how it all begins is that someone, it could be like a teacher, a neighbor, a mandated reporter, they will make a phone call to the state of New York, to the statewide central registrar, and they will share a report about a child that they think is in danger or is actively in danger. So at this point, an assessment is made to see what's going on with the child, and a determination for next steps will come next. I just want to point out that like not every phone call that is made to the registrar will result in the removal of a child. A lot of times preventive measures such as like services and therapy are put in to prevent that. But in the event that a child is removed, the child is then placed into foster care. And at this point, when a child is placed into foster care, legal custody is temporarily transferred to ACS. And a child is either placed in a foster home or in some kind of residential setting. I personally work with children who are in foster homes, who are living in the community. And so at the agency that I work at, there are 4 types of foster homes, and I'm just going to briefly share about each of them. So the first is a medically fragile foster home. So this is a specially certified foster home. Typically, there's only one foster child in the home, and this child has some kind of a complex medical condition. There have been kids with like sickle cell disease. There have been kids with like fetal alcohol syndrome, kids who have like mobility issues, or some kind of medical condition. So in settings like this, there is a registered nurse that works with the foster parent very closely to monitor the child's health and to ensure that the child's medical needs are being met. So these are our medically fragile homes. We also have therapeutic foster homes, and these are settings in which young people have more complex mental health needs. such as ADHD or kids with autism, kids with impulse control disorder. And in this setting, there is a master's level social worker and a behavioral specialist that monitor the child very closely. They are there to ensure that the child is getting mental health treatment, that they're able to be stable in the community, and to make sure that they're safe and well. The third kind of a foster home is a really small but mighty program. It is the Unaccompanied Minors Foster Home Program. So this is a setting in which children come to the United States by themselves without any sort of legal guardian or adult with them. So this is a government program, works very closely with immigration, but the purpose of these foster homes is to help children, one, get acclimated to the United States, two, gain status that often will look like asylum, or in some cases, children are able to get permanent residency. And this program will also help young people get resettled in different parts of the US. So those are our unaccompanied minor foster homes. And last but not least, this is the program that I work in. And these are regular / kinship foster homes. So this is the lowest level of care that children in foster care can be in. Children are in communities. They are regular foster homes, but by no means ordinary. And there is a big population of kinship foster homes where a relative or kin will come forward to become a certified foster parent for their grandchild or their niece or their younger sibling or their neighbor. So this is the regular / kinship foster home department. So those are our foster homes. There are also residential campuses and residential settings that work with children in foster care. Oftentimes these are like more targeted, more specific populations that work with like more vulnerable youth. So I'm personally aware of a program outside of the boroughs that works with children in foster care with cognitive limitations, kids with low IQ, kids with developmental disabilities. And nearby, there's also a campus that work exclusively with teenage girls in foster care who have been sexually exploited or trafficked. So these are more specific, more residential settings that really provide a safe living environment for children in care. Just to give everyone some data, some numbers, there are about 7,800 kids in New York City who are currently in foster care. There are kids from birth to 21, but there are also a handful of young people who are over 21 who are still in foster care. This number, 7,800, is accurate as of September 2020. And looking at the data, it always just kind of like fluctuates. I don't think it's exceeded 10,000 in a while, but that number is always in this range. So there are 7,800 kids in foster care. It's an approximation, and there are 24 agencies in New York City across the 5 boroughs that serve these children. So the job of the foster care agency, and part of my job, is to get these kids permanency. This is a word that I probably say every day at work. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the different permanency goals, but I do want to walk everyone through the process of what foster care looks like. So a kid is removed, a kid is placed into a foster home, and this begins the process of trying to get children either reunified or adopted, or for our older kids, getting independent living, or finding a legal guardian to care for them. The big part of my work is around visitation and is around service plans for our families. Visitation is called family time in my work. We definitely want to promote and continue the relationship that children have with their families. So there are different like stages to visitation, starting from like supervised visits to weekend overnight visits. We have visits that happen in hotels for our parents who are experiencing homelessness. So there's just like a whole slew of visitation. And we really encourage our children and our families to make the most out of this time because we don't want children to feel that they're separated from their families. So that's the piece about visitation. The other piece is around service planning. And so service planning is very much tailored to the circumstances of the case. So for example, if a child comes into care and a case is called in because there was intimate partner violence in the home, the service plan that is recommended would often include some kind of domestic violence counseling and or batterers or work around batterers accountability. There are also many other services that our parents go through: parenting classes, mental health assessments, anger management classes, substance abuse treatment. So those are just to name a few of the services that our parents do. So while this is happening, visits are going on, services are happening, cases are being heard in family court. So foster care is very much tied to the legal system in New York City. Every child that comes into foster care has a family court case, and hearings typically take place over every 6 months. COVID has drastically changed the way we do court, but it is happening. Everyone in this courtroom gets legal representation. The agency gets representation. ACS has representation. The parents, the children, and sometimes even like the foster parents have their own attorneys. So cases get played out in court, and many times judges are the ones to make the final decision on how a child's foster care case will play out. So I mentioned earlier that foster care, it's a temporary arrangement. I'm fully aware that there are kids who linger in the system. And to prevent that, in the 90s, there was a law passed called the Adoption and Safe Families Act. This is a federal law that requires states to file for a termination of parental rights, abbreviated as TPR, if a child has been in foster care for 15 out of the last 22 months. And during this time period, there have not been significant efforts to work towards reunification. I have experienced a number of TPRs in my time working as a child welfare professional. This does not happen overnight. Sometimes cases get drawn out over years, but the legislation is really there to really limit the time that children spend in the system, because foster care is designed to be temporary. It's designed to be short-term. So this is related to, I'm going to circle a little bit back to my conversation around permanency. So what is permanency? I feel like it's not really a word that we use in our everyday life, but children in foster care have one of 4 permanency goals. So one is return to parent, and it's exactly what it sounds like. If a child has a return to parent goal, the plan is to return that child back home when it is safe and appropriate to do so. Most children in foster care do end up returning back home to their families. And this is always the primary goal. The second goal is called kin gap. So this is when a kinship resource is identified, and legal guardianship is given to this individual to raise this child. Kin is pretty broadly defined in our work. It could be biological, so like a grandparent, a sibling, an aunt, an uncle, but it can also include people who are not biologically related to the child, so like family friends or like neighbors that you're close with. And there is a big push in the work that we do for children to be with kinship resources, and so many studies have shown that children overall just do better when they're with family. I have so many amazing foster parents who are kinship who have stepped up to take care of their relatives, and it's pretty awesome to see. The third permanency goal is adoption. So the model at the agency that I work at is to foster to adopt. We are not an adoption agency, and we really look for foster parents to become pre-adoptive resources to commit to raising a child when they cannot return home. These are COVID times, and in COVID-19 fashion, adoptions are being held virtually. So actually last month I was able to witness my first virtual adoption for one of my kids. It happened over Microsoft Teams. It was short and sweet. So that was pretty cool. And I do imagine that will likely be the pattern as this pandemic persists. And the fourth and last permanency goal is an acronym called APPLA, APPLA. It stands for Another Planned Permanent Living Arrangement. So this is a permanency goal for our older teens who are 16 and older. Many of the time, these children do not return to their parents. They are not adopted, or they don't wish to be adopted, or they don't wish to go live with their relative. So the purpose of an APPLA permanency goal is for children in foster care to transition into independent living in their own apartments, in their own spaces. So the agency will do everything possible at the child's 18th birthday to get them into their own apartment, and to help them kind of transition into being on their own. They're not alone in this process. We always connect our young people with a permanent adult connection. So that could be like their former foster parent, who they're able to call for guidance on a hard day, or it could be their teacher, that they go to have Thanksgiving dinner with. So we always want to make sure that our kids are always tied to some kind of adult in the community. Permanency, it really varies. Like there's no timeline. I have seen a child in foster care for 7 days, removed and then back into their home the next week. And I've also seen children who are in foster care for like 7 years, more than half of their lives. So it is a really case by case thing. And there's so many different parties that are involved in the foster care system. There are schools that are involved. There are therapists who are involved. There are lawyers who are involved. There are social worker advocates who are involved. Service providers who are involved. Like it's a lot of different people who are at the table. We all want the same thing for the child, is to have a safe, healthy, and happy life, and to get them permanency. So there's a lot that goes on. It's a mountain of paperwork all the time, but it is really like incredible work that happens. So that's kind of foster care in a nutshell. There's so many more components to it, but I think this is a good overview for people who don't really know much about it. So I'm not here to recruit nobody to become a foster parent, but I do want to touch on who can become a foster parent. It's pretty accessible. You don't need to be like, I don't know, there's not that many qualifications. So the state of New York requires you to be at least 21 to be a foster parent. You can be married or single. You must be in good physical health. You must have a source of income. You must live in a home that is free of hazards. You must complete background checks, fingerprinting, and clearances for yourself and all of your household members. And you must complete trainings. Trainings are offered at the beginning for like new foster parents, and then there is an annual requirement for foster parents to receive training to maintain their certification. Lots of different training topics. We've seen stuff about working with like LGBTQ foster youth. We've seen workshops around being trauma-informed in our approach. How do we talk about children who are very greedy with food? How do we talk about, or how do we work with young people who have mental health issues? So like a whole host of trainings that we offer. It's pretty amazing work that our foster parents do. I also want to say that, our foster parents are not just given a child to raise and then everyone like dips. That's not how it works. They're not left alone in the process. It is a team effort. There's so much support given to our foster parents who are with these kids 24/7, 365. In a pandemic, I don't really think anyone anticipated this, but our foster parents are with our kids all day, every day. There's a lot of support. Every foster parent has a backup that they can go to for support. We have an entire department at our agency that maintains our foster homes and supports our foster parents. There are foster parent support groups. They have the support of different case planners and supervisors. Like I personally like talk to my foster parents probably like once a week just to check in, to offer support. And I think the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, like I don't think that's ever been like made more evident than in child welfare. So that really rings true in my work. So why does all of this even matter? Like, why talk about fostering? I really can't separate foster care without thinking of my identity as a child of God. I think through Christ, the death and resurrection of Jesus, I think we as sinners were adopted into God's family. And I don't know, I'm like floored by this every time. And we see that in scripture. And so I just want to read two very brief passages in the ESV, the first of which is from Galatians chapter 4, verses 4-7. And that says, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent the spirit of his son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son, and if a son, then an heir through God." I'm also going to read from Romans chapter 8, verses 14-17. And this says, "For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God, and if children, then heirs, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him in order that we may also be glorified with him." So God has paid an immense price to call us his own children. And so I personally believe that adoption and sonship, it's biblical, because as Christians, we've been adopted ourselves into God's family. I think it also matters. Foster care matters because there's some really incredible people who are in this work with us. My kids and my families are like people I really hold dear to my heart. I think people in my church community especially know how much I adore them, kind of like my heroes. And they really do have like a special place in my heart. And they drive me bananas, but like I love them, and I just feel so honored to be able to like walk with them in this process. I really have never met people who are so kind, so generous, so resilient, and like so committed. Like some of the bonds that I see from my kids and my foster parents, like this is incredible, pretty unshakable. Like they are like this. And they really are there for each other through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like they might experience like really high highs and really low lows, and they see everything in between. And at the end of the day, they're still there for each other. Honestly, it makes me cry. I cry a lot at my job. I think I'm just like a crybaby, but it really is like very moving for me to watch. And I think family is something that means something to all of us in this Zoom space, really everyone in our world. Like family is something that means something to us. And I think for me, I think working in this field has really broadened my definition of what family looks like. I think I've been challenged in a lot of different ways. Like it's kind of weird to like think of a child going to live with a stranger, especially in our like non-kinship foster homes. But I've seen the progression of like at least 100 kids in foster care, and it's like something like really special there. I think there's a lot of value and there's a lot of worth in our foster parents providing a very safe and very stable environment for our kids. A lot of the times our kids don't understand what's going on around them. They don't understand why they can only see mommy on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. They just want to go home all the time. They don't really understand the complexities of case planning and the courts. And our kids have experienced an immense amount of trauma. The sheer fact that they are removed from their homes and placed into foster care is a trauma that goes with them for a long time. And unfortunately, I think our kids often receive the messaging that they're unloved or that they're unwanted. And this is the stuff that breaks my heart. And I think that fostering is a really powerful avenue to help kids to begin to heal from this trauma. And also it's an opportunity for kids to unlearn the messaging that they're unloved or that they're unwanted, because it's simply not true. Our kids are super loved and super wanted. Yeah. So some of the reasons. I'm not going to overlook the fact that it is a challenging thing, foster care. There are bad days. There are hard days. There are days when we just want to throw in the towel. And these are days that are riddled with disagreements. Kids run away. Kids want to fight their foster parents. Kids want to hurt themselves. Kids need hospitalization for intensive treatment. There are a lot of things that get in the way. There are a lot of things that come up. But when I see how much my foster parents and my kids fight for each other, that really it makes it all worth it. The work is hard, but I know that it's meaningful work. After having experienced what I've experienced, after having witnessed what I've witnessed as a professional in this setting, I don't know how I can't not foster in the future. It's something that I personally want for myself. I also know that it's a way to demonstrate God's love to these children. And I really hope that it's something that each of you will consider. It is a big ask, but I do know that it's needed. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap up here because I talk for a living and I could probably talk about foster care for days. I have stories for days. But I really do want to say thank you to everyone for being here this morning and just allowing me to share a little bit about this work with you all. And I'm going to pass it back to Fiel now.
Thank you, Sarah. I love the hearts that Kathleen is giving out there. Thank you. Yes, Sarah is awesome. So in the meanwhile, thank you so much for being here. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I'm going to drop the links in there. So you can just check out some of the stuff that we have going on, work with youth and just workshops like this so that you get updated. You will be added to the mailing list when that happens. And for future ones in the coming year and things like that. And good news is a lot of this stuff is already on YouTube. So you can watch all of our past sessions from human trafficking to Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, living missionally in New York City and working with immigrants, all the topics that essentially the church doesn't talk about, but is on your hearts. It's definitely on my hearts, and it's on the hearts of the people that I talk with when we're not in a building. And so we're very thankful for all these people that have been there. And so, yeah, this is a time for you to drop your questions for Sarah into the chats if you have any of those. And yeah, please consider donating to City Mission to help with Building Blocks, because we do have speakers from all over, and they are awesome people, and we want this to stay alive. And so you can donate through Facebook. It's very easy. And also you get, what's it called? The tax thingamajig sent to you. And it doesn't take any fees from you, like GoFundMe or Kickstarter. So yeah, you can do that. And Yes. So Lester has a great question, which is, can you list the requirements for fostering again?
Yes. So
Think
in the
better.
state of, oh, do you want me to put in the chat or?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, Phil, you can take
You,
notes.
you can also say it. You can also say it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So in the state of New York, in order to be a foster parent, you must be at least 21 years old. You can be married or single. You must be in good physical health. You must have a source of income. You must live in a home free of hazards. You must pass background checks, fingerprinting, and clearances, and you also must complete trainings. So those are the requirements to be a foster parent. So that's actually probably most people in this space.
Well, if good thing is Sarah is here to help you if you have any questions. We have another question from Ellen. Is multiracial fostering common? What tips do you give? Which is funny coming from someone that has done this. So thank you for that question. Yes.
Yeah. So Ellen, a large majority of our children in the foster care system are people of color. It is kind of rare to see white kids in foster care. It is rare to see Asian kids in foster care. It is rare to see Native American kids in foster care. A lot of our kids come from Black and Latino communities, and most of our foster parents are also people of color. It's a very diverse community. But I also will say that the system, it is no coincidence that the children in child welfare are Black and brown. I think it stems from larger issues like systemic racism and the way that certain communities are just targeted and more under surveillance. So yeah, tips. We operate from a very strengths-based perspective. We do a lot of anti-racist, anti-bias work with our foster parents. All of our foster parents are LGBTQ affirming. That is our policy as an agency, that we do not discriminate against any child that comes into their care. So it is very common across the board. It might look different outside of New York City, but this is the demographic in our city.
Wow, that's great because you answered Kathleen's question as well on demographics within the system. So we'll move to Dave Chong. How common is fostering to adopt? And in your experience, how long does this process take?
Yeah. So fostering to adopt is pretty common. I think we are given a target number of children that need to be adopted every year. We actually, in my department, we actually have one person who is in adoption and can get specialists that exclusively works with children who are on the adoption track. It is a legal process, so it does take a while. It will probably take at least a year and a half to 2 years for a child to become adopted, because one, you don't have access to the courts all the time, and two, sometimes these termination of parental rights hearings can become very lengthy. But there are other instances where parents will voluntarily surrender their rights to the adoptive parent, thus freeing the child for adoption and then making the adoption possible. But it is common. We do love our pre-adoptive foster parents.
Cool. That is great. And we have a question that is what Lester had and Aya, which is there a housing requirement for fostering? And I mean, do I have to provide a separate room for each child or for the foster child? And what does a hazard-free home mean?
Yeah. Thanks, Aya, for your question. This is a great question. There is no blanket answer. Sorry. This is like everything in foster care. Like there is no one size fits all. So there are more lenient requirement there. It's more lenient when it's like a kinship foster home. For babies, like newborns up to a certain age, that you do not need a separate room. However, I think after the age of 7, children must be separated by gender. So you do need to have a separate room for the child, depending on their age. Children do share rooms. Like a lot of the times you'll see bunk beds in rooms. And a lot of the times, like if there's a sibling group, the sibling group will share the room. And what does a hazard-free home mean? It's a really good question. The state of New York has a 20-page double-sided checklist for what a safe home will entail. You'll need things like window guards if you live in an apartment. You'll need things like a smoke detector. You will need to make sure that you have a fire extinguisher. You need to make sure that like unsafe items are stored away, that like cabinets are like mounted into the wall. So like honestly, there's like probably like close to 200 requirements that a child welfare professional will come to your home and assess for. They also ask questions like, for like older buildings, like when was the apartment built, so they can like check for lead and things like that as well. So I don't have the entire 20-page checklist in front of me, but there are a lot of stringent requirements for a foster home.
Wow. Okay. So I would love to ask, like, maybe is there like a story or like your favorite or most moving story from one of the lives of people that you've worked with, families or children, just to kind of share a bit of hope with us here?
Mm-hmm. I can think about one case. It was actually my very first home visit I did. And it was a teenage boy, and he was in a foster home for a long time, but the foster parent decided that like, I think she's at a point, because she had like adopted like close to like 10 kids, and she was like, I don't know if I can like adopt. And so we're at this point where like the kid kind of feels like he's in limbo. We had identified a new foster parent. He was able to like match with her. And he's been with her for about like 2 years now. He's like in high school, too cool for me now. But he has grown tremendously being in this setting. Like he has had a whole host of behaviors that would drive people crazy. He was often dysregulated. He had dealt with like his dad being incarcerated and his mom like honestly like dying unexpectedly. So the kid's gone through a lot. And it was just his birthday actually this past Monday. And earlier this year he became like freed for adoption. And it's not the end yet because he's not been adopted and we're just like waiting for a court date, but this is like a really special kid to me. I think one, because he was probably like my very first home visit, the first foster child I met. But he has really demonstrated like an incredible growth and like so much improvement. Like he's such a responsible young man now. Like he cares for his like younger foster brothers. Like the kid, I think he like wants to become a pastor. Like I love this kid. And I really look forward to like his adoption and like him getting his forever family. So that's like one example. And probably one of my favorites. I mean, I love all of them, but one of my favorites. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we have a possibly challenging question for you from the wonderful Kathleen, who knows how to ask really good questions, which is, what are some of the things you would want to change within the foster care system? Good luck.
Yeah. Oh gosh. What are some of the things that you want to change? I think in an ideal world, like there wouldn't need to be child welfare, right? That every kid is well taken care of, that no kid is in a setting where they feel unsafe or I mean, that's like the dream, to be like worked out of a job, right? But there are a lot of things I would like to change. Things move slowly in the foster care system, and this is why permanency takes so long. I really wish that like we had more frequent court dates. I really wish that we didn't have such high turnover. Like this is such a real problem in my work. Like I've already had like 3 staff turnover this calendar year. And for our kids, like there isn't that sense of continuity for them. And so for our kids, like what they really need is like stability. They don't need all these people walking in and out of their lives. That's something I wish for, that there would be less turnover. I wish for smaller caseloads because, you know, you're able to offer more individualized support when you have less families to work with. But alas, there are almost 8,000 kids in foster care. And yeah, the field is we need more workers for the field. I wish that there weren't barriers like poverty, right, in our system, right? Like in order for our parents to like go to get services like mental health treatment, they need insurance, but a lot of our families come from impoverished communities where they don't have access to insurance. Like there are just so many external factors that I think often get in the way that lead to like larger issues. I wish that there weren't as many Black and brown kids in the foster care system. I wish that we had so many foster parents that, you know, it's not always a fight to find a new home when we need to. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of this. Like it's a huge web, and I really wish sometimes it was just more simple.
So basically, Kathleen, she just wants to change the world and she wants you to join. So please join.
Yeah.
Great. We have 2 more questions from Dan, which are, what is the process like from beginning to end? Oof, this is like a whole, I think, well, I did ask in the poll if people were interested if we were to create like another, like just an info session specifically on this, but I'm sure you can touch on this quickly for us here. What is the process like from beginning to end for fostering, application, training, inspection, etc.? And I'm also assuming this is a shorter process than the process of adoption.
Yeah. So to answer your second question, Daniel, yes, it is a much shorter process to foster than it is to adopt. So if you, for example, were interested in becoming a foster parent, a lot of times the agency are bound by like location and region. So we would connect you to a foster care agency in your community or close to your community. You would attend a foster parent orientation to get a vague understanding of what an overall understanding of what foster care is about. And if you are interested, if you are committed to becoming a foster parent, there's lots of paperwork to apply to become a foster parent. Once you submit all of that and do all of the clearances, and sometimes the clearances can take 4 or 5 weeks to make sure that like you're not creepy or you don't have like, you know, like a rap sheet. So, you know, the clearances can take some time. Your home will also need to be inspected. It often can be done in one day. Someone will visit your home, they'll interview you. This is also like something I do at my job. Like I interview prospective foster parents and we get like your history. We talk about like, what is your parenting style? Like, how would you support a kid in school? Like, there's just like, it's a lot of paperwork, honestly. But it is a very intensive interview where someone would go to your home. And if all goes well, I mean, I really think the quickest turnaround I've seen to open a foster home, and we can often do it in emergency status for kinship foster homes. I've seen it done in about like 6 weeks. Yeah.
That's great, man. It's definitely something to think about for all of us, especially as Sarah's mentioning, we've been adopted into a family as children of God. Another question, very important. What is your favorite pizza?
Probably a margherita pizza made in a brick oven. Yeah.
Brick oven.
Yeah.
I think you need to throw in Italy in there somewhere.
Yeah. Haven't been.
Go,
but you know, COVID.
It's so different. They use a fork and knife out there. Oh, Kathleen's already ready to go with you.
Yeah, Lego.
Anyone have any more questions? Because we do have a little bit more time left if you are curious and have other things. I also wanted to shout out and say thank you to people like Ellen and Craig who have been fostering for quite a while. And I just want to recognize the amount of people they've had in their home. Foster, not foster, guests, not guests, all the amazing things that they do to open up their home to people. And yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of stories. If you guys know them personally, you can reach out to them and ask them, hey, what do you know about this? Because, you know, they have the crazy humility to be on a talk about something they are doing, you know?
Right.
Thank you for that as well. So yeah, any questions from anybody? last chance. But yeah, we are glad that we have people that are thinking about this. Like, you've answered, yeah, if there was a future workshop regarding fostering, you guys would be interested. Answering, let's do it. So thank you for that. Yes, we have a question from Arthur. Are there any realistic depictions of fostering in movies or shows? That is such a good question. Yeah.
That's a good question. I was expecting it. I actually was like, I watched like most media about foster care. I think one that I didn't realize really was about foster care until like an adult, like the movie Lilo and Stitch. Like Lilo is essentially in like a kinship foster care setting with her sister Nani. So that's one example. I mean, it's a cartoon, so we can only, and it's not about foster care. But it's one example of foster care in the media. A few months ago, I watched the movie Instant Family with Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne, I think. And it's about a nice couple who decide to take in like a sibling group of 3. It's like a teenager and then like 2 little ones. And it's like, it's a little stereotypical. But, I think it does really depict well the need for more foster parents to take in teenagers. They are often, everyone wants a cute baby. Everyone wants like a cute toddler. People are not inclined to the parenting foster youth who has their own kid. They're not really so enticed to work with like a defiant teenager. But we also know that these kids need care and love too. So I think that movie does a good job of kind of depicting that. Tiffany Haddish, one of my favorite comics, grew up in foster care, and she talks actually super openly about her experience in the system and how crappy it was. Fun fact, she actually got on a Zoom with our kids and she like Instagram lived it. It was pretty cool. So, I think she really talks openly about it. I know there's the show like The Fosters. I personally haven't watched it. Sometimes I feel like this stuff is like too close, so I feel like I can't really watch it. I know that there was like a big Netflix series on a child in California who unfortunately I think he died, and then Netflix did like a series on it. I think they're out there. I think they're drawing from reality, and so I think there is an element of truth to all of it. But these are people's lives, y'all. Like, it is complex, it is messy, and it's like it encompasses like every single emotion under the sun.
Wow.
But it's worth watching.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a great question, Arthur. So anyways, I was just thinking about fostering too, because like I didn't realize, but in Indonesian there's this concept of what they call a lift child, is the literal word when you lift a child. And so like everyone is somebody's other child. But then I've realized, no, the word lift is actually the Indonesian word for fostering. I didn't realize that until recently. And so it's actually a really big part of Indonesian culture. I don't know about other Asian cultures or things like that. My grandmother had apparently fostered kids that I didn't know about. And then she was, I think, in a coma of some sorts when she was about to pass. And it wasn't until the foster child came back and visited her and said, your job is done. Thank you for caring for me, that she was able to go. So yeah, fostering means things to people. Very last question. If you can't foster kids, what else can you do to support the foster system? Great question.
Yeah, Ellen, that is a really good question. I think there are a lot of volunteer opportunities for people to come and work with foster children. It is the holidays. We have so many generous donors who provide Christmas gifts to our kids, like new bikes, new toys, fresh kicks, like all of it. So that's like really one way. I think our kids often feel like they're not able to have like the normal family experience because they're in foster care, but we do try to like normalize as much of it as possible. There are ways to mentor young people in foster care. Like, we personally have a mentoring program that really tries to connect kids to different industries, because everyone wants to be a TikTok star, but I don't really know if all of my kids are going to become TikTok stars. So there are like mentorship opportunities to work with young kids to get them connected to real professionals working in different industries. There's a new program for youth coaches that's kind of like a life coach for our kids who are working towards a transition out of foster care, because the world is a hard place and we want to make sure that they have the tools to succeed. We have people doing workshops on like budgeting money, right? Or managing, or learning how to save, or like learning how to cook, like learning how to sew. Like there are very like fundamental things that people can do to care for our kids, even if it's not in the form of like being their foster parent.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. It shows that if there is a will, there is a way. I think that's the bigger message you're getting out of this. Like if you want to help someone, there are ways. That's why City Mission exists. That's why what she's doing exists. You don't have to feel helpless. Just go look out there. And so, if you want to get in touch with Sarah, I'm sure she will let us have her email to send with you to you. We will post the talk once it's done as well, and yeah, hopefully in the future we'll organize something else to talk at length about fostering for those that are interested. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for taking time in this crazy season, 6 days before Christmas. We're always glad to see you, but also we're just so happy that we're part of this community of people that want to see change. We want to see a thriving Elmhurst, Corona, Maspeth, wherever. So thank you so much. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you do want to consider donating, just donate through Facebook because it'll be easier for you. No fees, and it's good stuff. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah, thank you for all the people that showed up and will watch this afterwards and share this with your friends. We're so grateful for you, Sarah, and the things that you're doing and the stories that you are sharing with us. So God bless you, Sarah, and everyone that is on this call. Until next time in 2021. See you all later.
Thank you, everyone.